More on that. Joining us live here on the broadcast is Sanjoy Roy, who is the producer of the annual Jaipur Literature Festival. Thank you very much, sir, for taking out your time. What do you make of this horrendous attack on Salman Rushdie, sir? Because everyone in the country and abroad, internationally, we're getting multiple views how shocking this incident of this attack has been.
It's a terrible tragedy, and I think this whole aspect of violence has to be eschewed across the world, and we have to stand together. This is once again an attack on not just the freedom of expression, but on artists and everybody who writes and thinks and has a narrative which is somewhat contrary to what is acceptable. But at the end of the day, it seems that violence has been normalized and all of us have accepted the violence that we see around us. And that's, I think, the saddest thing here. And the fact that somebody can do this in a public space is encouraged by their thinking that it will be recorded by 1,000 phones and immediately be transmitted across the world. Absolutely. It's a very, very sad occasion.
But Mr. Roy, this is in a way execution of the fatwa that was given over 30 years ago against Salman Rushdie over his book. How do you see that happening? Because it seems that they still hold the grudge when this attack has happened.
Sadly, when you do a fatwa of this kind, and I'm not sure whether the New York police has given the motives of the person who attacked Salman Rushdie, but irrespective, this person should be looked at as a terrorist. This act should be seen as an act of terror, and exemplary action should be taken to be able to prevent a repetition of acts like this. It is a terrible tragedy.
Of course, because condemnation has been pouring in from everywhere. But your personal equation, because you had also invited Salman Rushdie for the Jaipur Literature Festival, but he had to pull out because of the threats that time as well.
It's been some time in the making, and yes, we were looking forward to have hosted Salman Rushdie at the Jaipur Literature Festival so many years ago. Sadly, the threat perception was such that he wasn't able to come. We did beam him in, however, through a live interview on the occasion. And our argument to the many organizations who had come together to protest him being invited, an argument to them was that if they put pressure on us to rescind the invitation, someday somebody will put pressure on us to rescind invitations to people like them. And most of the organizations, I think out of the 21 organizations, 19 accepted our viewpoint. 2 organizations continue to threaten violence and action. And we were very concerned about the impact of any kind of violence on the assembled numbers of people there. And as you know, tens of thousands of people come to the Jaipur Literature Festival. And sadly, we weren't able to have him attend live. And he too decided that with the threat perception that was provided by the government of the day, that he would cancel his live presence. And so instead we resorted to basically beaming him into as an interview on television.
Right, because
yes, it is of a great regret that we weren't able to host him. As it happened, he came a couple of years before that. And I think the year after that, he came to an India Today conclave, or maybe the same year. So it's not that he hasn't traveled back into India. He has. I think the governments have provided him adequate protection. But yes, it's sad every time a writer or a speaker or an artist is denied his or her or their right to speak and express themselves.
Well, you mentioned about the governments of the day. Would you believe that the Congress government back then failed to ensure security for Mr. Salman Rushdie? Because over the time, he's made an appearance back home here in India.
It's not in my position to comment on what the government of the day then looked at in terms of threat perception. They seem to have got, fairly good evidence that there was a threat perception and continued to say this to us and present enough evidence that there was threat perception at that point of time. So security is a concern of the government. It cannot be the concern of private individuals or platforms like ourselves. So we have to go with what the government of the day advises.
All right.
So whether it was some kind of vote politics or not is not in my ambit to comment on.
Right, but Mr. Roy, when this attack on Salman Rushdie also comes in the back of, you must be hearing in the news of Sartan se juda, such hate slogans that are being raised and the frenzy also that is being witnessed. Do you see any link there?
Any kind of violence needs to be condemned. Every kind of violence has to be stopped. It is the order of every end to prevent violence. Violence has been normalized. You read it in the papers, you see it on social media every day, whether it's against women, it's against children, it's against passerbys, it's against the citizen. And it's not just in India, it's across the world. Today, the world is besetted by war, by divisions. And even if you look at America, America is in many ways at war on itself. And we have to be very conscious and work towards building much more traction between communities, irrespective of color, religion, caste, creed, nationalities. Only then, by uniting together against hatred, will we be able to push back on the narrative of violence that seems to be consuming us all and will come to haunt us in every possible way.
Absolutely, because this is a larger message and point that you are making there. Mr. Roy, thank you very much for taking out your time and speaking to us. A very shocking incident that has taken place. Mr. Salman Rushdie is said to be on the ventilator in a critical condition there. We'll continue tracking all of the live updates after a short break. Stay tuned.